The hospital Celtics roll into Cleveland and put themselves in a position to win the game. Grant Williams emphatically declares he's going to make the game-winning free throws. He did not. So the vibes are down here in B-Town, where we're going to talk all about it, going to vent a little bit here, but then we'll shift a bit, restore the vibes, and talk about the road back to that early season form for the Celtics. All of that next on First to the Floor.
Who was going to be first to the floor here? And it was Marcus Smart, as he usually is.
Brown drives, way off the glass.
That's not the first time we've seen a superstar in green and white sacrifice the body.
Garnett, knocked away.
Welcome in to another episode of First to the Floor. Ben Vallis here. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. Joining me, as he has many times before, from Newcastle, Australia, home of Silverchair, it is Jackson Bauer. Jackson, how you doing, sir?
I've been better, Ben. I've been much better. Much like Daniel Johns has been better.
Well done.
For those of you who know Silverchair is. But yeah, I'm happy to get here and do a bit of venting, do a bit of group therapy, and hopefully we can be a bit more optimistic by the end of this show. What do you say?
I think that's the plan. Yeah, we're going to turn everything around here on this very podcast. And of course, we've got the full Aussie crew tonight. Hot Take, Jake Eisenberg. Welcome back. Welcome back, Jake. How you doing, man?
Doing good. We're another episode of Where's Jake? Another new podcast background. This time a little bit colder. So we got beanie on hand, tea, just staying ready.
He's traversing the globe. We love it. We love to see it. Before we get into it, a reminder that we are moving to the CLNS network, or we have moved, and are very happy to have done so, moved to the CLNS network. And as a result, we're changing podcast feeds. We're actually moving back to the OG First to the Floor podcast feed. So just search First to the Floor in your favorite podcast app. You will find us, or on YouTube. You will find us. The link to that feed will be in the show notes below. If you're lazy, scroll down, click on that, subscribe to that feed. If you weren't already subbed there, that is, like if you discovered us through Celtics blog, please head over to that new feed and subscribe. The numbers suggest there has been a slight downtick in listeners, obviously, as we move off the much more popular Celtics blog feed. So please, if you're listening there, please head over there and subscribe. All right, let's get into it, guys. Some pre-game notes. Happy birthday, Marcus Smart. We're going to leave with the positive Marcus Smart vibes before we pivot a little bit. 29 years old, the man, Marcus Smart. Happy birthday yesterday by the time you're listening. Happy birthday to Jason Tatum, who turned 25 a few days ago. For this game, no Al Horford, no Rob Williams, no Jason Tatum, Blake Griffin, and Mikey Moose starting in this one. Before we get into the game, guys, Jake, I'll start with you because you currently look the most worried here if you're watching on YouTube. Just exactly how worried are you about the current state of the Celtics?
I never thought that the Celtics were far and away the best team in the NBA. Like there was not a gap between them and the Bucks. I think we just have to accept that this team does this to us between 1 to 5 times per year. Sometimes it can be once or twice, and it could last a week. It could last half a season, like last year. Going back to the Brad Stevens era, I do think that these guys have earned the benefit of the doubt to perform when it comes to the playoffs. You obviously want to be peaking at the right time, and this feels like eerily similar to the first half of last year, like even as similar as like the Knicks game themselves, right? Double overtime. RJ Barrett, at this time it was Emmanuel Quickly, just cannot close these games for some reason. But even in the midst of that, like the Utah game that they lost when Utah made like 33s, it always felt like a really good team was in there. And we know for a fact that one of the best teams in the NBA is in there from the second half of last year all the way through the playoffs, the first 2 months of the season. We beat the Sixers, we beat the Cavs like literally 2 games ago. Like they are in there. It's just whether or not you think these warts they're going to pop up in the playoffs. Like I think at this point we just have to accept there's going to be between 1 and 2 and maybe 3 games per series where they lose it. Game 3 against Milwaukee, game 3 against Miami, game 4 against the Warriors. It's just, can they survive 1 or 2 bad games in the playoffs per series? I tend to think they can because the Bucks are good for 2 terrible games per series as well. Offense will fall apart. Sixers are good for at least 2 between sulky Embiid and concussion
2
Harden.
claws, you mean?
Yeah, right. Like how many? And then the Cavs not worried about. We seem to play them really well. Outside of the Knicks, who seem to be just like the perfect team, all the other teams have real flaws as well.
Yeah, avoid the Knicks at all costs. And you're right, they are in there somewhere. We've just got to dig through it and find them in the mud. Jackson, to what degree are you concerned or worried about the current state of the Celtics?
Long story short, I right now am a 5 out of 10, which doesn't sound much. We're definitely seeing some very concerning habits from this team in the very recent past. I still have reservations about Joe Mazzulla, his rotations, his overall game plan. I think we're moving away from the defensive identity that we seem to build that historic offense off last season. That seems to be gone. So look, it would be higher, but I don't want to get too positive just yet. I know we'll save that for the back end, but all I'm going to say is, man, I don't think you can really justify anything over like a 7 out of 10 if that's your scale. Mm-hmm. We're still 6 weeks from the playoffs, and everyone's healthy. Maybe bar Rob Williams, hamstring, and Dino Gallinari, who we haven't even seen yet. Everyone is still in pretty relatively good health. So playoffs are about 6 weeks away. 6 weeks away. For some perspective, 6 weeks ago we were on a 9-game win streak. We just beat the Warriors. So a lot can change in 6 weeks, and I'm backing on this team that we know is in there, that Jake alluded to, that's come out of adversity more times than I can count. I am still holding on hope, and I still do believe that team is going to show up and is going to peak at the right time. I'm not seeing any great evidence of it right now, but as I said, it's still 6 weeks away, so I'm okay for now.
Yeah.
How about you, Ben?
I'd say I'm a 6, and it's only to elevate it by one number from yourself, Jackson, not to try and best you in any way or anything like
I'll
that.
Take Ben. All right.
Not that being like more worried is besting anyone anyway, but just the timing of it, just that we're on this sort of downhill slope towards the playoffs. Last year, as much as the beginning of the season sucked, man, it was good to be peaking as we're heading into the playoffs. Like those were some good feels. And now panicking a little bit, like fingernails along the wall as I'm like being dragged down to the basement, Texas Chainsaw Massacre style. I don't know why that analogy just popped into my head. That's how I feel.
That's scary.
That is scary.
It's not that bad.
I'm gonna have to cut that. Yeah, but just the timing of the slump here is concerning. But like you said, both of you, we know so much about this team because doing this pod 5 years, they've been like a focal point of our lives for so long. We know all the little nooks and crannies. We know all the little traits. Like no NBA team is perfect. Like the Bucks are a great team. They give up a lot of corner threes. The Celtics are a great team. Currently, they're giving up, for example, a lot of dribble drive penetration to folks like Emmanuel Quickley. These things are happening. The Celtics are not playing at their best right now, but they have shown us, even in this recent stretch, periods and examples of their best basketball, like the end of the Knicks game, where they turned up, the volume defensively. They turned it up to 11, played 2 minutes of amazing defensive basketball and forced overtime before ultimately shitting the bed. And again, against the Cavs today, which we're about to get into, some serious bed shitting there by one Grant Williams at the free throw line, as I give you guys a number of timestamps to write down. Sorry about that.
I'm on it.
I am worried. A lot of my worry has to do with the timing of the slump and not so much the magnitude of the slump, because we've seen it all before. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Yeah, totally. I think we're coming from the same. Yeah, we're coming from the same path here. But I don't know. It's just like, even though we've seen the trends start to go down, and sometimes it feels like it's going down quite violently, I just still think there's plenty of time to turn it around. Even if like recent history suggests that we're on that downward trajectory, I still think we're able to turn it up.
Yeah, and obviously different situation. We don't have the same pedigree, but the Warriors last year totally caught lightning in a bottle. Like they truly did not peak until the conference finals against the Mavs. Like they got blown out by like 40 against the Grizzlies. They had the whoop that trick game with Draymond dancing. Then Ja goes down, and like if he doesn't go down, he was dropping like 40 a game against them. Mm-hmm. And then they get the Mavs, who like they're just custom like designed to beat, and just like boom, they're off. Lucky for us, like we got the peaking Warriors, but like all it takes all it takes is a week. Like all it takes is one series. Like if we get like as bad as it would be to maybe get the Heat, like maybe we need like a tough first round opponent to just like to really like if we get the Nets, for example, of course, what are we going to do? Take them lightly. What did we not do last year? We had Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and Jason Tatum played maybe the best wing defense since peak Kawhi Leonard. Like maybe that's what it takes. Is a series like that. The doldrums of the NBA season, etc. Like coming out of the All-Star break, I mean, like our Slack channel we were buzzing. We were like, this is what we needed. We needed the break. JT hit 10 threes. We were all so excited. And it has not been. Why were we excited? That was a terrible feeling. Terrible idea.
What is wrong?
But like, it's okay. You know, plenty of time to turn it around. And seriously, all it takes is a week, and we know that it's in there. So just hold on. Don't let them take you down to the basement, Ben.
Yeah, you're so right. Day to day, it is hard. I've
No
listeners
question.
out there, you know what I'm talking about. You guys know what I'm talking about. But you are absolutely right. Zoom out, big picture view.
If you haven't watched the playback stream with us, which we do for some Celtics games, watch Ben's face as we watch one of these leads evaporate. It's just that analogy in facial expressions. It's just grabbing his head. Not that I'm not also upset, but it's glorious.
Proper body horror.
Yeah, we got to fire the playback back up for the Bucks game on the 30th of March. Like, I don't know what my work or life schedule looks like for them. That's how organized I am. I have no idea what's coming up for me, like less than a month away, but got to take some time off. Got to get on playback for that because that's going to be a hugely important game, especially if we do
Friday.
turn it around
Perfect.
in a short game. Awesome. Yeah, no one works on a Friday, not in Australia. Yeah. Now, look, we do have to touch on the Cavs game very quickly. I don't think any Celtics fans currently really want to deep dive into any recent games, particularly today's one. I actually thought that the Celtics looked like pretty good for the majority of this game, but unfortunately another blown lead, although you could potentially or very much with certainty attribute fatigue to that blown lead. Jackson, just big picture, what are your overall takeaways from the Cavs game today?
Yeah, man, look, I don't know. I'm not sure whether it's a fatigue thing. Potentially, maybe it's an attitude thing, which I'll elaborate on a little bit later. But I think if you just want to boil it down to this game in particular, and in the microcosm of maybe the fourth quarter, I think we just got out hustled. The Cavs have this guy named Lamar Stevens, who I've never heard of, which is no knock on the guy. I haven't heard of a lot of people on this earth, but Lamar Stevens, he comes on. He seems to just be out hustling, out fighting everyone. He's hitting shots. He's getting rebounds, and he was just that spark plug that the Cavs needed to get back into the game. And I think we're probably going to elaborate more on blown leads. I think the Nets game, that was an egregious blown lead, but I even have theories as to why, that went the way it did that I find understandable. The Knicks game, I think we were up like 11 or 12 at one stage, and then that ended up, then we found ourselves down 10. I think we're down 7 with like a minute to go. Managed to pull that one out. But the blown lead thing tonight, I think, was completely justifiable because you're right, Ben, that the fatigue plays a role. Playing on the road plays a role. The Cavs are a good team that have seemed to have had our number. Like even in the game that we beat them like last week, they were not that far away from sending it to overtime again. So there's probably some matchup stuff there that's just a little bit icky for us. But I think it's completely understandable. I think most teams, if you put them in a similar situation, regardless of form, I think you would find that they too would probably give up a lead and find themselves in a knife fight in overtime. So I think, having said all that, I think it probably just comes down to, I think this is taking out of context the kind of week that we've had and since the kind of form we've been in since All-Star break. I just think this is a kind of a loss that you have on the road that tends to happen against a good team. I don't think it in itself is worth panicking about. It's when you zoom back on the recent picture that it becomes a little bit more concerning. And if you look for games like this to sort of like, you want them to right the ship, you want them to get back on track. And when it follows a similar pattern, you find yourself thinking, oh my God, like there's something just totally snake bitten about this team, which might be the case. But I think this game itself, it's completely understandable the way the wheels fell off. Am I crazy for thinking that?
No, I think if you if you are going to zoom out, zoom all the way out, because if you zoom out only for like the last week, that's bad. But if you zoom all the way back out to January 2022 or the beginning of the season, things don't look so bad. It's just, yeah, it's like the sample size of them being not that good is larger than you would want. But in this specific context, you're right, Jackson. Like, they played a double OT game last night. I could not believe how much energy Jalen played with. The fact that he fell apart with 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, I think is very explainable.
He was gassed.
Yeah.
So gassed.
Yeah.
And no one else seemed to, like, he had like that 1-3 where he just kind of flicked it up. I've seen him make shots like that before, but you knew it wasn't going in. He was gassed. Of course, though. He played 45 minutes, which means he played 40 without the overtime. And honestly, was maybe like, this is an elite Jaylen Brown game. Like,
Totally.
He was very
He was
close to
triple
triple-double.
yeah, like he like some of the best decision making he was making. I thought he was playing good defense, getting on the boards, obviously attacking the paint, doing it all. And like again, you can do both. Look at the context of this game. This can be very encouraging. Like when you think about the playoffs, this guy that we saw for 3.5 quarters, he's a problem as a number 2 in the playoffs. And it comes back to us trusting that they will figure it out enough to be a problem. It's just Lamar Stevens, man, just box him out literally once, literally one time. And it was on a bunch of guys. It was on Grant. It was on Brogdon. I thought missed a bunch of rebounds. And Grant was yelling at him. And I was like, right message, wrong messenger. It was just rough all around.
Initially, the rebounding battle was really,
yes,
I don't want to say in our favor, but just surprisingly even, given that our bigs were like Cornette, Muscala, and Blake Griffin. Like, we're missing our entire front court in this game, going up against Jarrett Allen, Mobley, the incredible front court there for the Cavs, and like totally held our own. And then like from halfway through the third quarter onwards, it really began to slide, and that's winning time. And unfortunately, you give up that many extra possessions in the back end of the game. Like, if it's close, like, you're probably going to lose, unfortunately. But yeah. Jaylen Brown was awesome. The neurotic Celtics fan will say, like, that's proof to Jaylen that like he needs his own team because he was incredible on his own. But I agree with you. But I've got to cover that angle for the neurotic Celtics fans out there, myself included.
Of which we have many.
Yeah.
And we love you all the same.
Yeah, to assuage your concern there, I think Jalen reflection should be, I'm amazing, but I need Jason to close that out.
Totally.
I don't have 45 minutes of being Luka in me. So I think that's fine, Ben. You don't have to worry too much. I think the rebounding battle was 21-21 in the first half. And then the fourth quarter alone, 19-11.
Yeah. And that's essentially the disparity, because I think there were 6 overall better off of us through the game. So yeah, that's basically the game right there. And you're right, missing the entire front court against, when you think of the Cavs, and like as good as Garland and Mitchell are, like I think Mobley and I think Jarrett Allen, and those are like 2 massive players that, not only can score, but, obviously get a buttload of rebounds. So I think, like I said, it's so frustrating, but I can't help it but feel like this loss out of all the ones we've had so far is the one to be least concerned about, considering the injuries, considering the opponent, and also considering the Cavs were, before the overtime today, 6-0 in overtime, now 7-0, and 3-0 against us. So as soon as it went to overtime, it kind of felt like the writing was on the wall to a degree. It's just tough. It's just a tough loss, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to get to the Grant.
I was going to say, how have we not gotten to Grant yet?
But just quickly, the Celtics, they shot over 50% from 3 in the first half. They ended the game shooting 33% from 3. So I don't have the percentage stat for the second half. Suffice to say, it was significantly less than 50% for team.
I think we were 12 or 14 made threes in the first half, and I think we finished with 16.
Yeah,
so
3 for 19 in the second half.
3 for 19.
The ball movement was like, the ball was fizzing around early in the game. Transition defense, which we'll get to later, as far as like defects that are hindering this team, like that was quite good in this game. Again, in the first 2.5 quarters, there was just a lot more tenacity about the team. And I know that's kind of like like a badge that the hospital Celtics wear on their sleeve. Like, well, we're down 1, 2, 3 guys. Like, let's dial everything up. But it was really good to see because that's been something that the team has been lacking significantly in these poor performances, particularly since the All-Star game. Should we just get to the Grant free throws? I think we've covered everything. Like, there's a lot to get to. Like, Marcus Smart had some very poor decision making.
He's on the list.
Yeah, he's on the list. I'll save us a timestamp there and just call it the list. Grant Williams. I'm going to make both of them. He did not. Who wants to take this one? Who has the best rant, like, cocked and ready to go?
You go.
After you, Jake. After you. Sure? All right.
I actually, you had to. I don't mind the saying.
I'm
going to make both. What was he supposed to say?
Yeah.
I was like look down on your feet and like pretend it's not happening. No, you
just ignore him.
Yeah.
Like, I think you have to. Like, that's an athlete move. You have to chirp back. Otherwise, you're gonna. Obviously, he was nervous regardless. But yeah, as soon as he front clanged that first one, you just kind of saw Grant's career flash before everybody's eyes. He was just like, oh no, this is all we have to do. You missed a 50, 40, 90 from last season. And then, so this game plus the Bucks game where it was the hospital Celtics, where he had the wide-ish open three, which he pump faked on Giannis to win, like have a shot to win it, and then dribbles it off his foot. Now this one, the New York game was just a disaster, like abject disaster. Not fully on him. He played 44 minutes. That's on Joe as well, who we'll get to, also on the list. But Grant, like, had a fantastic first half. He was like, okay. Launching like deep above the break threes, like just firing, offensive rebounding. He stayed in front of Garland. And then he just second half fell apart. The lack of consistency for Grant right now. He's obviously become basically the whipping boy for Celtics fans on Twitter. Kind of fairly in a way. Like he's the one asking for 18, 20 million.
Yeah.
And like right now he's going to be lucky to get like 10. It's been a rough go for Grant, and the problem is we need Grant, like specifically for the Bucks matchup. Like he's at one of like you want to take the load off Al and Jason and everyone else from guarding Giannis over and over and over again. You want to try and get his confidence back. It could be a moment. It could be a positive. Like
it could be a bad moment. It eviscerates his confidence. Like
rising from the ashes.
To miss 2 free throws in that situation, like that's not a confidence builder. Like we're trying to build the guy's confidence, and this, has just shattered it. I don't know, Jackson, have you got anything you want to add there? It was brutal.
So
Grant Williams.
Grant Williams is an 83% free throw shooter this season, which is good enough for 4th on the team if you've had over 1 attempt per game. So Luke Cornett has to fall off that list. I think he's the 5th. I think he's 5th in this team for free throw attempts, which at less than 2 is what it is. I don't know what it's like with other teams, but those are the numbers. We talk about like where it went wrong, how takeaways from the game. Like obviously there is so much that goes into a game other than a pair of free throws or like one shot. But unfortunately, we lost this game because Grant didn't make his free throws. It's as simple as that. He's got to make one of those. Cavs don't have a timeout unless they pull a Joel Embiid and they get it off quicker. That's a win. And we're not sitting here sort of like asking ourselves how close we are to like just jumping off the edge of our hopes of the season. Instead, we're sitting here going like, man, we needed that. That was a gutsy win. And just basketball is just it's such a game of fine margins, man. And like Grant has gone from what was going to be like, yes, Grant is back game, like you said. 80% shooting from 3, decent, all-round performance in the hospital Celtics lineup to this moment that, even though it didn't lose us the game, it sent us to overtime. Like we all know, like that was it. That was the killer. So yeah, I feel for the guy. Before I came on, my girlfriend said, please don't go hard on Grant Williams. He tries his best because she's a little bit versed with what's going on Celtics Twitter and whatnot. He does have to be better, but like I'll say this: his confidence is going to be down at the moment. He's going to be in a very, very tough place. I think this team has his back. I don't think anyone is just like, throwing his stuff all over the locker room and just being like, man, like you won't swear because I know we can't. But you know what I mean? Like, I think the team is going to have his back. And I know it's like, wishful thinking at this stage, but all you've got to get, it just takes one game. If we get another game 7 Grant performance, it doesn't even have to be game 7. It can be like, game 1 of round 1, or it could be against the Bucks on the 30th, or, one game like that. And all of a sudden, that confidence can come back. Will it come back after something like this? I don't know. But I feel I can't be too upset with him. Even though I was about 3 hours ago, I was livid. I've calmed down a little bit now, and I feel a little bit sorry for him, because I feel like someone at least has to be sorry for him rather than wanting him kicked off the team.
Yeah.
So yeah,
well, we've had these conversations like who will replace Al Horford, and Grant Williams' name has been the name in that conversation, and now it's like,
that was always crazy. Like, you can't replace Big Al, like playoff Al. It would just be a different iteration. They just have to those resources have to, turn into a different kind of part of the team. And then we got like you say, they have to rally around him, and I'm sure they will. Like, they've been around, they've lost enough dumb games between. Jason's not there today, but he can relate. Marcus, I mean, we can go through a lot of Marcus brain explosions over the years. Today he had one
from today,
which we're going to get to. At the end of the Knicks game, which is where this worries me as far as like the chemistry thing. I think it'll be fine because I think the leadership will get together. Leadership meaning Jalen, Jason, Marcus, Al, even Malcolm to an extent, just because he's such a cerebral president. The end of the Knicks game where it's like the Joe Mazzulla timeout thing, and Tatum was like waving to Grant, calling the horns set, and Grant just got no idea what's going on. And then Tatum's yelling at him on the way back to the bench. And it's like, yeah. And I saw a funny tweet on Twitter today. It's like, you see the tweet from Tatum saying, "Big shot, Derek." And then you just know he was watching the game, and he's going to be sitting there in his fucking bedroom being like,
no tweet. No tweet
Grant.
for the Grant situation.
I mean, we still love you, Grant. Send tweet.
Just a private message to Grant after that one, I think. Nothing public.
Jesus.
Any final takeaways that you've just been holding on to the Cavs game that you need to fire off before we move on? Because we need to get onto the airing of grievances here, fellas.
Yeah. Just on the last word on Grant Williams. I understand that there is a vast gulf in ability, talent, overall basketballness from Jaylen Brown to Grant Williams. But Jaylen Brown missed 2 clutch free throws in overtime against the Knicks about a month ago, and that cost us the game. He had an and one opportunity to tie the game against the Lakers the very next game, nailed it. Okay. It's not like Grant can't redeem himself.
Yeah.
Might not be from the free throw line, might not be by shooting threes, might just be a good, gritty defensive performance, whether it gets the Blazers in our next game or against the Bucks on the 3rd of March, whatever. I believe Grant can come back from this. He's really going to have to work hard, and he's going to have to, give it his all. But I'm not abandoning Grant Williams yet. I'm going to keep my Grant Williams stock. And if we are sitting here in about 8 weeks' time after a first-round exit because Grant Williams was unplayable, I'll change my opinion then. For now, I'm still riding with him.
Yeah, I've got no choice. We got to ride with the
got no
guy.
choice.
Yeah, no choice. Well, I don't know. You got a lot of good players on this team.
Yeah.
If he falls
love
apart,
Gil.
they'll still be okay.
I love Gil. I love his dad.
I love it too.
Friend of the podcast.
Friend of the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, I do love Grant Williams. And look, there's a lot more that we could have gotten to, a lot more notes that I'm just looking at here that we could get to, but we've got to move on for time. But if you've got any other takeaway thoughts from the Cavs game or even the Knicks game, hit us up in the comments here on YouTube. Hit us up on @FirstToTheFloor on Twitter. Let us know your thoughts on this game. But in the meantime, we need to move on to the airing of grievances. Guys, let's just let it all out here. What's wrong with this team? And then subsequently we'll move on to, how can we fix these negative traits? So I'll start, and we're just going to do an around the room. Blowing leads, which I think is the obvious starting point. And obviously, there's a lot that goes into blowing those leads, but just the fact that we continue to do that. So the tweet from Greeny after this game, a 28-point lead, a 14-point lead, and a 15-point lead, referring to the last 3 games, is what has been given up. the 28-point lead, I think, is probably the one that stings the most. But as we continue to do this, they, in a way, sting a little bit more each time. That is unfortunately new. Like we've seen them do it before in the Tatum Brown era, but sequentially like this is particularly concerning. And again, I mentioned the timing moving in towards the postseason. That's the grievance I'm airing. You guys can add to that, or you can chime in with your new grievance, and we'll get to how these can be resolved in the next segment.
It's not good, Bob. The blowing of the leads, like the Miami game 7, like the almost abject disaster always comes to mind whenever we blow a lead. I'm like, why? It's just they just taste it. They taste victory. And they just let go, and they cannot regain the rope. I don't know how you fix it, right? Like it's in them. It's in them. It's just will it cost them a title? Like you look at the Bucks series, they just kind of won. Like the games that they won, they kind of just blew them out. Outside of Game 4, I think the Al Horford explosion. Similar to the Warriors series, like the games that they do win, they just kind of win going away, which actually happens in the playoffs more than you kind of think. Usually like only 2 or 3 games come down to it. And a lot of the time it's like double-digit wins. So like just win every game by double digits seems like a good plan. Yeah.
You just do that, you morons.
Yeah. Let's do that.
Yeah, look, the blowing lead stuff is hard to swallow because it's obviously you hate losing, but let's go back to the Pacers game a few months ago where we were down 30. Now we lost that game, but we pulled that all the way back to I think about 6 or 4 points, and they just kept hitting some ridiculous like threes in the clutch to keep us at bay. I remember feeling way better at the end of that game, knowing that we had a comeback in us than I did after, say, the Lakers game when we were up 17 and then proceeded to give up I think it was a 30-point-5 run.
A bad win.
Yeah. Which we were 0.01% chance of winning. Luckily for us, AD and LeBron James on high minutes, those guys are Noah Emmanuel quickly. And they were just absolutely blowing chunks at the end of that game. And we just had enough to wrestle that back. So even though these blown leads currently are bad, like I think we're being held to recency bias a little bit here. And like obviously the Heat game comes to mind. Game 5 of the Bucks, I think we were up like 7 points with a few minutes to go and ended up losing that horribly. But there are just as many examples of us winning tight games and digging ourselves out of holes. I can't name them specifically.
No,
but we know they're there. We know they're there. Like we just beat the Sixers in a very clutch manner a couple of weeks ago. The Lakers game I mentioned, the last, I know it was a loss, but like, we were down 7 to the Knicks and then managed to get that back to overtime. So look, I don't think it's so much. I don't know how you cure blowing leads other than just like concentrate the whole time, which you would assume they have. But I have another theory. This is the grievance I want to wear. I think it obviously leads into the blowing leads. I think it's just an attitude thing. You look at teams like LeBron James's Cavs, who are 500 until February, and then he's like, "All right, guys, now we're serious," and then they proceed to go like 25-5 into the playoffs. Plenty of examples of champion teams doing this. I think that's what this team is stuck with at the moment. It's super annoying because they haven't actually won anything. But I honestly believe that when we beat the Golden State Warriors on the 19th of January, which is 6 weeks ago, I keep coming back to that 6 weeks thing. I think they all just collectively like took a big sigh and went, we did it. We got this. Get to the playoffs. Get there healthy. We're good. And I just don't think that's the attitude to have. I think you need to have that hunger. You still need to remain competitive throughout. And maybe it's them thinking back to how hard they had to play leading into the playoffs to get themselves out of the rut that they or the hole that they dug for themselves in the first half of the season. Now it's the inverse problem. Now they've got the cushion. Now they can sort of take their foot off the gas a little bit. And I think they've all just got their eyes on game 1, round 1, and then they go from there. I don't agree with it. I think it's terrible because we could have had the 1 seed. That 1 seed is now gone forever. We could end up with the 4 seed if we don't turn it around quickly. But I honestly think after they beat the Warriors, we're 11-9 since then. I honestly think they have just decided, you know what, we're good until the playoffs start. And I wish they didn't.
I think that's a pretty fair assessment. Yeah, they like to take their foot off the gas. I don't think we're in danger of falling to the 4 seed just because of the schedule lightening up. And I was talking to my dad today. It's like we could easily end up the 3 seed, and I'm like, I actually don't care so much about the seed that we are as long as we're playing good basketball going in. But if we're playing good basketball going in, that means we're going to be the 2 seed, maybe even the 1 seed still. Like the schedule's very easy, he says.
That's
touch
the
wood.
positive note that we're going to end on. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Any major grievances that you want to air, Jake? Because I mean, there's got to be something in there. Surely, it's been a rough couple of weeks here.
Are we gonna do? Can I do Marcus? Are we saving that?
No. By all means,
Marcus,
air that grievance.
Marcus, I love you, and I trust you. But gee whiz, man, you gotta rein it in. Like he's just. He's a wild horse. You got to break him in. He's a wolf, leader of the wolf pack. He's a grizzly bear. He's all kinds of wild animals. And we love that about him. But right now he's playing unbridled, not controlled. Like Wolverine kind of before he joins X-Men. We got to just get some leadership and direction into his life again, because
I think you just broke the record for the most animal references on this podcast.
Yeah,
in a 30-second spell.
Absolutely.
And I'm all for it.
I thought you were going to say like a stallion, an untamed stallion.
Ben, I think you're muted, mate. Or am I muted?
No, I heard him. Or did we lose Jackson? I think his headphones went maybe.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Jackson? No, it's Jackson. I'll just timestamp that. The live stream people are just going to have to put up with this, but we'll cut this out of the podcast. Anyway.
No. Yeah.
So you were making some animal analogies.
Is apex predator, name it. Crocodile, great white, but he's better as an orca when he's working as a team. Some of the best, coordinated animals in this world, orcas, killer whales. He's got to get back to being a killer whale as opposed to being a great white shark. I think you can sum it up almost with just the field goal attempts. He's taking 11.6 field goal attempts post-injury. Pre-injury, he was taking 9.5. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that's up 19%, that's a lot. That's a huge jump. Yeah. He was playing the best basketball of his career pre-injury, going back to last season. I honestly thought he would never have the numbers for it, but how well he was playing, I thought he was a fringe all-star, deserved to have, some recognition from that perspective. But since he's come back, he's pressing, he's taken today, the ill-advised three-pointer off the offensive rebound with 30 seconds left on the clock. Disaster. Just a disaster.
Yeah, he's not the maestro anymore. Marcus Smart, the maestro, is no longer conducting the orchestra. And last year, he had the best season of his career. This year, this very season, he had the best stretch of his career. And looking at the online discourse, it's that's completely forgotten by the Celtics online hive mind. And I know they're not the most reliable source to look at for taking the pulse of the team. Very reactive. But before the injury this year, Smart was absolutely the best version of Marcus Smart we have ever observed as Celtics fans. He was incredible. So we do have to allow him some time to get back. And I'm kind of accidentally traversing into why everything will be okay and how we can fix the Celtics. But yeah, it's a rough stretch for Marcus Smart. Other grievances to air before we move on to how we're going to fix everything and make everything okay. I'm just going to rattle off a few here for the sake of time, and you guys let me know what you want to hang on here. Getting blown by on defense has been an issue, particularly by small dynamic guards a la Emmanuel Quickley, Donovan Mitchell, who are guys who are going to blow by you on defense, who are good. But our perimeter defense with guys like Marcus Smart, who we just talked about, and this could be part of his slump, Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon, and then the help defense that we can offer with a healthy Time Lord, everyone on the team, really. Defense was such a part of our identity last year. That's really fallen off. Lack of consistent effort, which might be the overarching factor for everything that we are talking about here as far as our grievances. Grant Williams being a shadow of his former self. Smart no longer maestroing that we talked about. And then Joe Mazzulla's coaching. Like, Joe has copped a bit of flack across fans and media just for some peculiar responses to questions post-game and some odd decisions or non-decisions during the game. Rotations, crunch time lineups, like Grant over Derek in the Sixers game and the Knicks game. Just some questionable decisions. No timeouts in certain late game situations where, I suppose it's one of those things where in hindsight, you could be like, obviously that was the wrong decision. But if it goes well, you're like, what a genius. What an incredible basketball mind. And unfortunately, they've gone wrong in every instance. And so here we are talking about it. I know I went through a lot there, guys, but does anything stand out to you as far as like the key grievances that we are justified in hanging on to?
I think when you can't pinpoint one thing in particular that is like the main source of the issue, I think the coach really has to be, like, rightly or wrongly, is kind of the one that takes the fall for it, and he's the one that is like that has to answer to it. I think he's gotten better as the season has gone on. I think he's taking more today. I think he took some very, like, the kind of timeouts that like most fans would want him to take, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. At least the consensus seems to be that was the right thing to do. People criticize his out of timeout plays, which there are numerous examples of it. But hey, the one that got Al Horford an open three, or mostly open three, which was about that far away from dropping against the Knicks, that was the right call to make. I just happen to like him as a person. I love that sort of like, can't get a absolute like stun mullet poker face, can't get a read on him. Odd short answers. He kind of is like, he reminds me of like some sort of like basketball Rain Man. He's got like all of like the smarts, but just none of the social skills. But the funny thing of that is it seems that he is not so much a tactician and X and O's guy. His main strength seems to be his relatability and his ability to like, get the team on side. But come the playoffs, you're going to need a little bit more of that X's and O's now. So you're going to need to know when to like put your influence on the team. We said in our Slack, well, I said in our Slack chat earlier today, and I want to talk about it because I think it's a great idea. I think you should honestly just spin a wheel before the game twice. Everyone's name is on the wheel, and whoever's name comes up, you sit out, and the other name, you sit up, and he just goes, sort it out, and goes away. Because you can't deny, we played pretty well when we've got like a couple of stars out. Granted, it didn't, and that's not a pun, by the way. Granted, it didn't work out for us this evening, but I think, I just think he's got some methods that, not everyone understands, and they don't always come off, but I think there is a great coaching mind in there, and I don't think Brad Stevens hires him without having enough intel on him to know that he's probably the right guy. Having said that, though, I've seen enough errors from him, and I've seen enough, peculiarities from him throughout the last few weeks that make me think if we come up against a better coach, a more savvy coach, i.e. an Eric Spoelstra or what have you in the playoffs, I think we could end up getting out-coached. So my grievance is, yeah, exactly. So I don't know, man. I want it to work out for Joe Mazzulla, but he's my worry in the team was 5 out of 10. My worry in Mazzulla is probably more like a 7.
Jake, thoughts on that, and then any other final grievances before we move on?
Look, taking the interim tag away before seeing what happens on the playoff run, you could still fire him, I guess. You just have to pay him if it doesn't work out, and it's like glaringly obvious. The good news is I don't care who's coaching the Heat. No chance that team can beat us, even if it sucks for 6 or 7 games. But outside of that, Doc Rivers, I mean, come on, good luck. And then Bud has his flaws as well. So there are plenty of Bucks fans that are out on Joe. But Joe, okay, we've done it twice now. You got away with it in the Sixers game. You played Derek over Grant.
Yes.
You played Grant over Derek. in the Knicks game. I think I may have just mixed up my words, but you played Grant over
No,
Derek
we
in
hear
2
you.
games, Sixers and Knicks. You survived the Sixers one. The Knicks was a disaster. There was a clip going around today of Emmanuel Quickly's big day because he had a career game. Firstly, what a game. Like, never seen someone play 55 minutes so effortlessly. But every single highlight on this video, the person who put it together must have done it purposely. Every single one, Grant was the primary defender pretty much. How do you not just go to Derek? How does Grant end up with 44 minutes and Derek only gets 32? And I guess the counter I've seen online is they had Grant in there for the Randall matchup. Randall had 31 points as well. Like, that wasn't working. Give me Jalen, Jason, Al on and Derek on Randall. Send doubles. But there's no Brunson out there. They're not a 3-point shooting team. They rotate well out of double teams, always have. It was a just disaster of a decision to keep Grant out there for as long as he did when he was giving you nothing on offense. I know he made some plays down the stretch, but like it was really bad. So I think you have to go away from Grant when it comes to closing time. Derek has to be in there. Like, we had Derek White's dad on this podcast, and a big part of it was like, according to the advanced metrics, Derek White is an All NBA player.
Absolutely.
And it's like pretty obvious when you watch the games. Like, when he's out there, almost always good things happen. Like, when you go on.
Well, on Derek White, like, Smart is coming back from this injury situation. We talked about Smart not maestroing, and Smart's pre-injury and post-injury numbers are pretty glaring, particularly around field goal attempts, and then a huge disparity in percentage. So he's shooting more, converting less. Does Derek White need to play more than Marcus Smart while Marcus Smart recovers, Jackson? Like, do you think that's a viable option going forward?
I never thought I would be in favor of dropping Marcus Smart for, quote unquote, an understudy or whatever. But I think while Marcus sorts out whatever it is that needs to sort out, and I had some technical issues while you guys were talking about Smart, so I apologize if I'm repeating any of these points here. But no, I'd be in favor of it. I would be in favor of it. I don't know too much about the stats. I know Derek White has a better shooting percentage. I think Smart's got more assists. I think the assist to turnover ratio is significantly better for Derek over Marcus. So, and just on the eye test alone, the kind of season that he's had, let alone the last month that Derek White has had, I think it more than justifies him starting over Marcus Smart. That is. So, yeah, I mean, again, 6 weeks until playoffs. Like you said, the schedule is easing up a little bit. So if there's time to experiment, if there's time to give Marcus some time off with, the goal being he's 100% and he's a bit more mentally focused for the playoffs, then I'm 100% in favor of it. And Derek White, is killing it, continues to kill it as a starter and as the primary ball handler and taking that spot of Marcus, then it should probably continue, right? Like you play your best players for these kind of games. And if, I think Derek is like more than making a case that he earns that stuff. He earns that spot.
When you think about the issues of the Celtics, effort, pace, consistency on defense, Derek White ticks every single one of those boxes. Mm-hmm. I want him out there as much as possible, especially when they're struggling. Amidst this slump, he is the perfect guy. He just wins, take a charge. Like, when it comes down to the wire, it's going to be, he gets a tip on an offensive rebound. He just all the little things, the Marcus Smart things, honestly, I think you play them together if you want to get to Rob soon as well. But I think Marcus, Derek, the Jays, and a big, that's the lineup.
Yeah, well, that's a good segue. Rob's inability to stay on the court as much as we love him, Jake, is probably our final grievance here. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because that's, it's obviously been adding to the issues the past couple of days.
Now, our number one fan, Z Gamer, has been making fun of me all season because I've been like a mama duck, the mama bear, more animals about Rob Williams' minutes. Anytime he starts to get over a certain amount, I start to get worried. And if it's an ankle sprain or whatever, that's more luck. And then the hamstring, though, that's overuse. That's, playing a lot of a lot of basketball. And what happened in the games leading up to this? Against Cleveland, 30 minutes. New York Knicks, 29. Philadelphia, 31. And then in the fourth game, he hurts his hamstring. And you can kind of go back through the basketball reference like stuff. It's like in the loss to Phoenix, he played 30. In the win against Detroit, he played 28, and then he misses a game. It's just like he plays 26, 32 against Memphis, and then that weird game against Milwaukee, only plays 12 and misses a game. It's like I was actually surprised when I went through it. It was like you can see the minutes tick up, and then he misses a game. And I know he's not playing back-to-backs, and they're being cautious, but it was kind of striking to me. I'm sure they're obviously all over it as far as the medical team's concerned, but like give me 20 to 22, 24 max minutes of Rob and give me like proper Rob. Because like he even kind of said this week, listening to the Garden Report on CLNS, Sherrod Blakely kind of reported that.
Great network.
Great show.
Yes.
Only the best talent.
Yeah, like constantly bringing in good talent. Sherrod reported that Rob kind of was saying that he's not going balls to the walls in order to preserve himself, which kind of you can kind of see it. Like he's been really good, and the defense has been good when he's been out there, but it's not the same. So it's like give me 18 to 22 minutes of Rob play single bigs, and then they play fast. Like I understand that the big lineups were so dominant last year. We also drove Rob's knee into the ground because Ime's like a crazy person when it comes to minutes. It's just like stop being a bitch and just like play, dude. And Rob's like, okay, well, I'm just going to limp through the finals. And now I've had 2 knee surgeries. Thanks a lot, Ime. So I'm a firm believer, like single, you can still have some minutes against the Cavs. You probably still want to do it considering the double bigs. You want to probably do it a little bit against the Bucks, but like a lot of the time, spread everyone out, get faster, get more pace, like get more ball movement, get more attacks to the rim. Like he's a non-shooter. That's my kind of lineup rant. Like let's move the ball, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like in the Missoula ball system, like he doesn't seem to really fit that. Because it's like, as far as I can tell, Missoula ball is drive, kick, everyone shoots. Right? Rob can't do that. You see, he's always got the ball like completely alone, top of the key, which is like not uncommon for bigs in the NBA. But like, you think about, his peers or the guys playing next to him. Al Horford can shoot the 3. Mike Muscala can shoot the 3. Blake Griffin probably can't shoot the 3 that well, but that is pretty much what his weapon is now because he ain't dunking over anybody. I haven't seen Rob Williams of last season at all so far this season. It's understandable coming off the surgery. And even when you said, Jake, like he said to himself, he's not going balls to the wall. He's holding himself back for it. It's understandable. But I couldn't tell you a real highlight, alley-oop, highlight block at all. I'm sure they're there, but like I got a Rolodex of moments last year where he was like you couldn't take your eyes off Rob because he just was everything defensively. He was handling it. Offensive, the lob threat, it was always there. I haven't seen that so far this season. I hope he's saving it, and I hope it peaks, which we've said a few times, like right before the playoffs and into the playoffs. But I don't think he's fully recovered or is fully healthy.
In the Cavs game we played at home. I guess 1 or 2 games before he got injured, he was like crucial in that game as far as securing rebounds on both ends. And there were a few long lobs thrown to him. I think one of them he botched on the throwdown, but like the elevation was there. That to me was one of the better Rob games this season. And at the time, you're like, awesome, Time Lord, he's ramping up. Here we go, post All-Star break. Like he's starting to look like himself. And then, unfortunately, the injury. But like it was starting to show a little bit. And I wonder if any other player, mild hamstring strain, they're back a few games later. But with Rob Williams, Jake, like you said, they're all over it from a medical standpoint. 7 to 10 days, like maximum window for return based on a minor injury because like we just want to prolong Robert Williams heading into the playoffs. So he was starting to look a little bit like himself. And even when he wasn't, just what he offered the team from a rebounding perspective and a rim defense perspective, even just reputationally,
Deterrent.
I'm not
Yeah.
going to drive at the rim because Robert Williams is there. That was a factor as well. So just having him out there, regardless of him being at 100%, I think is really important. So rest up, Rob. We need you.
Yeah, 70% version of Rob's still a really good player, but when you talk
Absolutely.
about wanting to win a title, I think even asking for 100% Rob is probably unfair. Like, just all we need is 90%. All we need. That's the kind of player he is. He's such a freak. Like, he's so good at this game, and it must suck for him as well, and the coaching staff and everybody, just because everybody knows like what they've got. To not be able to like capture it and hold on to it for long enough must be really frustrating mostly for Rob, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
Now-
because as sad as it is, he's probably not going to have a very long career. So you need to make like these years when his knee still is together for the most part count. Because call me pessimist, I don't see him playing like that when he's 29, 30. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why I got to keep the minutes down.
Yeah. And starts jacking threes potentially. So before we move on, we're going to get to the upcoming schedule, and we're closing in on the 1 hour mark. So we're going to be very quick here. But almost more importantly than any of the grievances are, how are we going to solve these problems, guys? So a quick around the room on what the Celtics need to do to solve these problems. I'll start first because I really only have one major point, and smooth brain take, but just apply a consistent level of effort. We've talked about it already on this podcast, on prior podcasts. We've seen like what the Celtics need to do to be good. We know what the good Celtics look like, and we've seen pockets of it even as recently as this Cavs game and the Knicks game as well. If we know what that looks like, they absolutely know what that looks like. Hopefully, they understand the difference between where they're at now and what it looks like to apply that at a consistent level, even at a sort of 80 to 90% success rate. That really is what's needed here, to just apply that more consistently going forward. The recipe is known. It's documented. It's sitting in the kitchen on the little open book stand thing. It's understood. We just need to go out there and cook that on a regular basis. Jake, your head in hands right now. Is that too simple of an approach, or how else do you think these issues could be resolved
you're
for the
right.
Celtics?
Like, and I'm just thinking about the conversations they're having. Like, I'm sure they're having these conversations, right? Like, I'm sure they had this conversation before the Knicks game and before the Cavs game, and we're going to have it today and going to have it before the Portland game. It's just, how do they just go out and do it? Like, what I was thinking is like, commit to your deeper rotation for most of these games. We want to be rested and healthy. That is by far the most important thing. It's like we've been loading everybody up on these minutes out of the All-Star break and losing in overtime. Like, once the overtime starts, like you can't, like, put in Derek or whatever it is. Like, tell Tatum and Jalen, like, unless we go to overtime, it's 36 minutes. Like, it should be lower than that. It's 36 minutes. Al, it's 28. Rob, it's 22. Muscala, you're like, everyone needs to be playing. They have a deep freaking team. Like, it's enough to like have enough people play where they don't go overboard on the minutes. And it's about playing the right way versus the wins and losses. Like, if they lose and you're like, if this was the playoffs, Tatum would have played an extra 3 or 4 minutes and with Jalen, and they'd probably win the game. But when they were out there, they played the right way. That's fine. But it's like loading them up with 45 minutes while they're pooping all over themselves. It's not good for anyone. And then okay, because I know Brad's talked about you want to load. You do want to have some of these games where they're playing high 40s to prepare for the playoffs. So it's like, okay, 3 games in a row, we're doing controlled minutes. This game's coming up. We're gonna, if it's close, we're gonna ramp you closer to 40. Like, that should be the plan. But that's why I have my hand in my head. My head's in my hand. I'm sure they've had these conversations. I'm sure they've thought about it. This is the flu medications jump on my brain. But like, I'm sure they've had. That's why I'm like, I'm sure they've had these conversations. But like, just do it. Just please, Lord. So that's Jackson.
Yeah.
Nice.
Jackson, yeah. How would you fix the situation?
I'll be quick. Focus on the details, focus on execution, take advantage of this pretty relatively soft schedule that we've got to finish the season. I think if you can get some momentum, you can peak at the right time. Even if you were to lose, what we got left, 15 games, even if we lose like our next 6 and that becomes what, a 9 in a row slide, if we win the next 9 going into the playoffs, none of this crap for the last 2-3 games, month, however you want to frame it, none of it matters. All right. Focus on the details, focus on execution, take care of business with this easy schedule, peak at the right time. Confidence will be back. They know how to execute in the playoffs. I still believe in them. I'm sure they all still believe in themselves. I think that's how you do it.
Mate, you are going to get a spot on the coaching staff with that delivery and those
Yeah, I love
words
it.
you use. That's fantastic.
I have a Quizlet account too. I've got all of the credentials.
Now, you mentioned the upcoming schedule, and that's how we're going to wrap this one up. So, and this is where, so it's a positive note to end on here, and things start to ease in terms of schedule difficulty. So next coming up, the Blazers at home. Dame's been cooking, but the Blazers haven't been a great team all season. Then massive road trip, and I am obviously speculating here, but I would hope that a road trip, post All-Star break where the guys didn't have a lot of time together, they'll be on the road together, they'll be traveling, they'll have no choice but to be together for a long time. Does that help them re-galvanize as a group? We've got the Hawks on the road, the Rockets, the Timberwolves, the Blazers, the Jazz, the Kings, all on the road. And I know that the Kings are like world beaters offensively right now, but it's a nice story, but I don't necessarily look at them as a threat as far as like knocking the Celtics off in any way. So I think that's a road trip where we're playing a lot of struggling opponents where the team can travel together, galvanize, and sort of focus more on themselves rather than like some sort of gargantuan opponent more than themselves, if that makes sense. I really think that this road trip is really well timed and that the caliber of opponents are such that it puts us in a good position to rediscover ourselves. Am I crazy, Jake?
Yeah.
Or
No. Look, and again, I think it's hard to get out of, we're all following the Celtics so closely, and like we're living and dying by Grant Williams free throws. But like, the Pacers take everybody to the brink. They did it to Philly today. The Sixers just beat the Bucks. Like, one of the best teams in the NBA. The Knicks are the hottest team in the NBA, 9 in a row. The Cavs, one of the best teams in the league. Like, the Nets loss is just disgusting. But even they've been like, we kind of revived their season. And Mikal Bridges is now like Kevin Durant. But
give us a bad team. Give us the Hawks. Give us the Rockets.
The schedule's been hard. The schedule's been hard out of the gate. Like, and it's been, back to back here as well. So like, you kind of would, if you told us, that you were 3 and 4 out of the gate here, it wouldn't be crazy to think because like some of the matchups are difficult. But this Blazers game, just if we lose, it's gonna be bad online. It's gonna be bad for everybody listening to podcasts. It's gonna be a great time to just go to the mountains and get away because the Blazers, 3rd game in 4 nights. The Celtics have also had a rough, heavy minute schedule here, but we're going to be at home. Blazers have been on the road, like they're on a road trip of their own, but a tough one against the Magic, tough one against someone else that I'm forgetting. And now the Celtics. Like, if we lose to the Blazers, it's gonna be a bad time. But again, can we remember, like, it's just one game. Even if it hurts just an extra 10% every time they lose a game and they should win.
Yeah.
Any parting thoughts, Jackson? That would be the 4th loss in a row if we do lose to the Blazers.
Yeah. Like I said, I will do my best not to freak out if we lose to the Blazers. These teams there's no like real bottom feeders in here until you get to like the Rockets, the Spurs, etc. We really thought this season was going to just be a tankathon for Wembanyama. There's only really like 4 bad teams, and there's a lot of guys in the middle. This is like the middle schedule that we've got coming up here. So, it's always tough to win games in the NBA. I have no doubt we'll drop at least a couple of the next 10. But really, after the run that we've had, after we're trending down. I think this team is aware enough and mature enough, I hope, to look at themselves in the mirror and say, we got to stop messing about. We got to get it together now. And I think if you're ever going to get like a run of, softballs in the NBA, I think the next 1, 2, 3, 4 Wolves can be a bit difficult.
T-Wolves are good, but like we play them well. But like we get the Blazers twice, and the Blazers, I just like had a look. They squeaked one out against the Pistons, squeaked one out against the Magic, and then pumped by the Hawks, pumped by the Pelicans, pumped by the Warriors, and then like beat the Rockets, pumped by the Kings, lost to the Wizards. Like they're 3 games below 500 for a reason. Mm-hmm. So like we get them twice. Outside of the T-Wolves and the Kings and the Bucks game, like of those however many games, those are the only 3 with like good opponents. The rest of them are like below 500, like a play-in team. The Pacers game is going to be like, it's going to be the first time anyone scores 200 points in a game, but like just because they play crazy fast. That'll be a fun game. But yeah, it's perfectly timed for us. And if we just take off, go on a little run, and then beat the Bucks, clinch the season series, even if it's not, to get the 1 seed, who's going to be feeling great? Celtics fans and the Celtics, because that would have mean we have beaten the Bucks 3 times, we own the Sixers, and that's all that matters. Let's freaking go.
Let's go. Great positive ending to the podcast, guys. If anyone's still listening, I apologize. As a podcast team, we're incapable of having a conversation about the Celtics that lasts for less than an hour, let alone 45 minutes. All right, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for joining us. A reminder to please subscribe to the First of the Floor podcast feed. We'll be moving completely off the Celtics blog feed a week from now. Meanwhile, we'll be back with another show at the end of the week. Jackson, Jake, love your work, guys. Until next time, go Celtics.